guys, you need to listen to me, honestly. The days are running like crazy. What is it? I can still remember that last week, it was just Monday because I wasn't around. I was out of the country.
Yeah. Wow.
I was literally, I was out of Nigeria.
Yeah,
I wasn't within the shores of this country. That's why I know that, you know, the days are running. Just literally last week, I was running with zebras and with the birds. You know, I was breathing air that was, you know, clean, and I was eating fruits. I was doing farm to table.
Lola Robitin.
In Ghana.
Not
Robitin.
my dear.
You
Yeah,
are
Excuse me. Out of the country.
It's out of the country.
Even if it's 45 minutes to the airport, doesn't matter.
Okay.
And now tomorrow is Friday. Can you believe that? That this tomorrow live is Friday.
So in other words, we are halfway through the month of January.
Wow.
What did we say Happy New Year, please?
Just a few days ago.
Just a few days ago.
So I did say the same thing, that it's looking like 2025 will be like 2024, that it's just running.
Bless is your mouth that is doing this thing. You know, since you sat on this table for New Year, you have just been
bringing all your
dropping
sass.
proverbs in front of elders.
Yes.
I don't understand. You know that as a Yoruba child, it's very, very rude for you to very proverbs when elders are sitting in front of you.
Acting wise.
Acting wise in our
What
presence.
do you people want? Stay connected with your history and your roots.
Does not mean drop proverbs
I
in front
speak
of
now
you.
with history. Oh, what do you want?
We want you to. We literally want your head.
Lolo, you're back to Nigeria.
Oh, sorry.
My hand is near you. I'm just saying.
You know, I was just in Ghana. I was out of the country.
Charlie, it's okay.
Sorry. Okay, it's all right.
But anyways, I think that, I mean, we need to make the best of what we have, the moments that we have. I know that to some people, sometimes, right, January is slow, sometimes it's fast, depending on how much money
No,
you
we
have.
are used to it being slow. This one is running away. So where I don't know.
Trust me, Catherine, if you're broke, it will be slow. Very slow.
No.
If you're paying school fees, it's very
If you're
fast.
broke, it will be very slow.
Ask any parents right now. I'm not seeing myself.
But let me act like a Nigerian and like Catherine, and I'll start from here. How was your night? Is your Christmas tree still up?
Mine
Wow.
is. We always
was
take
there,
it down at the end
wasn't
of
it?
January.
Okay, just put together.
Yes.
Friday took it down last week.
No, unashamedly it is up, it will remain up. Because up is where I'm going.
Up.
Your
tree is still up.
going. My
Is it
tree.
still
We are
obviously your tree?
going
My tree is still up.
higher.
So I found a hack for myself.
Going
Right?
higher, higher.
Somebody is online waiting for us because you guys are about to enter gear 2 with this. And we'll take it up tomorrow because tomorrow is Hot Topics Special Friday and we have so many hot topics lined up for you. But one of the hottest topics that News Central is taking on is the fact that we are right now in Kano State for the latest in the News Central Town Hall series. Now, News Central's correspondent, Bernard Akede, who is in Kano, is on the line. Bernard, good morning to you. How is Kano looking this morning?
Good morning, ladies. I think I can, I say I joined my spirit with Lolo and say I feel like I'm out of the country too because I woke up to 12 degrees Celsius this morning. So yeah, I'm out of the country in Kano.
So Kano is cold. Okay, we'll take it like that.
We'll take it like that.
We can see that people are already coming into the town hall behind you, and we have a few questions just to lay a foundation for that.
Yeah, so
Bernard, the town hall is focusing on the Kano Pfizer story, yes? It's been 28 years and many victims say they have not received compensation, neither have they received justice. So what's the mood like as people settle in before the town hall starts?
Thank you for that. Now, I think the mood basically is it's a mood of people looking for hope, looking for some kind of closure, looking for some kind of you know, some answers, basically. I've spoken to some of them, and I'll speak to one lady now, once I'm done with this conversation. There was a gentleman who said that his child, I believe, or his brother, was affected by one of these tests. And I asked, did you get compensation? He said, yes. I asked how much? He said $7,000. Now, for those who don't understand, you will think that's a lot of money. But actually, the amount of money he was supposed to receive, which he told me, was $175,000. Now compare that, what he got, to the effect that you know, the drug testing had on his ward. That person has lost their sense of hearing. There are some people who we saw here who were stretchered in. Some have lost you know, their sight, actually. You know, there's a gentleman who went completely blind, and that's not to even talk about those who completely lost their lives. Still, to quickly finish that, Catherine, let me move on to that. There's this young lady who you've been seeing on the promo that we've been putting around. She's right here. I'll take a quick answer answer from her. Good morning.
Good morning.
Please, could you tell us your name?
My name is Rukaya Salisu.
Now, you've been live on our TV station for a while. I want you to just quickly tell us the effect of the drug trials on you in 1996.
This injection damaged my bones and some parts of my body, like my teeth and my bones. I can't walk so fast and too long. It affects me very well.
All right. For those who cannot see you very well, I'd like you to please stand up and come out. I think this chair is blocking you so that they will know who I'm speaking with. Please come forward.
Okay.
Put the camera down a little.
Thank you so much. Now, Catherine, that is one of the many people that we've been speaking to and that we are going to speak to today. I'm expecting that this town hall session, today's session, is going to evoke a lot of emotions, and we certainly hope that we'll get answers. Thank you very much.
Thank you too. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernard. It's so hard to hear and listen to, these stories. 28 years. It's so disheartening to see that people are still fighting for justice for 28 years. And they're looking for an out-of-court settlement that was reached at that time, reportedly for about $75 million to Kano State and $175,000 to 4 families of dead children in 2009. But we are told that there are more than 4 families, and it seems no one received the $175,000. Are we expecting a Pfizer, representative at the town hall today? Or what about people from government, particularly someone that was there when that settlement was reached?
Right now, we've reached out to government officials, we've reached out to Pfizer. They have been conversations. Pfizer said that they disbursed those funds as at the time. They said, at some point, they couldn't completely trust the fact that after disbursing the funds, that the funds will actually get to the places that it should go to. So they put up their own committee comprising of their own officials and some government officials to ensure that, these monies get to where it's supposed to go to. But this is actually why we're putting together this town hall. We're hoping that officials of Pfizer will come here. We've also sent out letters and messages to government officials as well, hoping that they would also join us here so that not just us, but the people who are seated here and other people who will be coming and the world in general would be able to hear the truth as to what exactly happened from 1996 up until date. And so that, those who feel that they have been hard done by, or those who feel that they did not get the compensation that they deserve, will eventually get something that, if it's something that is, commensurate to what they have lost. I know that there is no price you can put for the loss of human life, but at least something that will make them feel better than they have been feeling since.
All right, Ben, thank you so much. It is going to be, I think, what's going to be a very emotional day for many of us involved in this. But the town hall will be happening at 11. We'll let you go now as we continue to get preparations in Kano. And we'll be seeing you and the team at 11 o'clock. Thank you so much. All right, so we're going to move on and take a quick break now. When we come back, Cheta Nwanze, partner at SBM Intelligence, joins us to look at plans by Nigeria's National Bureau of Statistics to include illegal activities like prostitution, drug trafficking, and human trafficking in the country's rebased GDP. Let's talk about it after the break.
Welcome back to Jasiri. So I'm almost too sure that the conversation we're about to have will come as a shock to some people. They may have heard the news and thought they misheard, but even me, I had to do a double take when I heard it. So the country's National Bureau of Statistics, the NBS, has unveiled plans to incorporate proceeds from illicit activities, including drug trafficking and prostitution, into Nigeria's gross domestic product, or GDP calculations. This move is aligned with the international best practices in economic reporting, as outlined in the System of National Accounts 2008. According to Baba Madu, head of the National Accounts at the NBS, some countries already factor in illegal trade, which can significantly contribute to their economies. However, he noted that gathering accurate data is challenging, particularly when individuals underreport their income.
And additionally, businesses can transition from legal to illegal activities, further complicating the data collection. Despite these challenges,
Glasses.
my glasses. That's why these challenges, I said, Madhu emphasized that some activities typically account for about 3 to 3.5% of the GDP, and the NBS is also expanding its GDP calculations to include other sectors, and those other sectors such as the National Health Insurance Scheme, the modular refineries, domestic household acting as employers of labor. Those ones are included also. Adeyemi Adeniran, the statistician, Statistician General of the Federation and the CEO of MBS. I cannot be the only one that I would challenge. I know that. Of the MBS highlighted the importance of these rebasing exercise in ensuring that Nigeria's economic indicators accurately reflect the country's economic realities. And today joining us for what I'm sure would be a lively conversation is Cheta Nwanze, partner at SBM Intelligence. Cheta, very much welcome back to Jasiri. Since it's the first time that we're seeing you this year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. You beat us to it. It's good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us, Cheta. Let's get straight into the questions.
Thank you, Jessica, for being here. Now, I want us to start with a little bit of foundation. Now, the NBS is planning to rebase the country's GDP and Consumer Price Index. This process involves updating the base year used for calculating economic metrics to reflect the changes in the economy. And the current base year for GDP is 2010, while the CPI base year is 2009. Now, between the previous base years and now, so much has happened. So what are the major happenings that you think will play a role in how this exercise turns out?
Well, again, thank you for having me. I think it's first important for us to explain what rebasing is, what base effect is, and why rebasing is important. So basically, rebasing involves updating the year that is used for calculating economic metrics so that we can reflect the changes in the economy. As you have rightly pointed out, the current base year for our GDP is 2010, and CPI is important for. Let's speak English. CPI is inflation. So we calculate inflation using 2009 metrics. We calculate GDP, which is the total economic output of the country, using 2010 metrics. Now, best practices is to update these every 5 years. So essentially, we haven't updated them in 15 years and 16 years respectively. So this is why it's actually important for the rebasing to happen. So the rebasing is a statistical exercise that should have happened before now twice. We've not done it 2 times, and I must say it's not the fault of the MPS. I think it's important to point out that when Dr. Yemi Kali was the Statistician General, he begged for the funds. But remember that, and this is where one of the big problems, as far as I'm concerned, comes in. We play politics with everything in this country. So you have a situation where in 2017, the MBS released unemployment figures. That's when Dr. Yemi Kali was the Statistician General. They released unemployment figures which directly contradicted what the federal government was saying at the time with respect to unemployment. Remember that Garba Shehu was telling everybody that they created 200,000 jobs or 2 million jobs, something like that. And then the unemployment figures for Q4 2017 came out, and they showed that he was lying. So suddenly unemployment figures stopped coming out, and in November 2018, if memory serves me correct, Yemi Kali had to take to Twitter to complain because people were asking, where are the unemployment figures? It's pretty much the same thing that has happened over time with respect to the rebasing. We haven't done the right thing. Now, rebasing removes what is called base effect. Base effect basically can distort the way you look at things. So, for example, take inflation. Right now, inflation figures were released yesterday, and they were about 35%. But you see, as things, when you say inflation is the rate of the rise of prices. So over time, that inflation will begin to get smaller. It doesn't mean that prices are going down or prices things are getting cheaper. Is that the rate at which they rise is slowing down. It's a very normal economic phenomenon. So what you need to do, especially as the structure of your economy changes, you need to change the base that you are calculating from so that you have a clearer picture of what is really happening. So I'll give an example. The last time we rebased our economy, which was in 2010, we had not yet been captured. Our economy at the time was still very much oil dependent.
Yes.
We hadn't captured things like telecommunications, which had begun to play a much bigger role since the early 2000s. So when we rebased in 2010, all of these things were suddenly captured, and because of that, we found that the economy was much bigger than we thought it was. Oil, which still till now accounts for the majority of government revenues, is actually give or take about, is less than 10% of our GDP.
Interesting.
Since that time, since that last rebasing 15 years ago, and I think I need to keep repeating 15 because became where they born 15 years ago, don't they mature or don't mature finish. Since that 15 years ago, things like fintech have become bigger. Things like Nollywood have become a lot bigger. They're not captured. So there's a need to actually rebase. So I think that the key issue is because we didn't do the right thing at the right time, people will look at this thing askance, especially when you consider the context of that, according to the IMF, Nigeria is now the fourth largest economy in Africa. And because Nigerians are obsessed with size, if we rebase and the rebase shows that we are the largest again, a lot of people will say, that we just did it to feel good with ourselves. That is a problem, something that we should be doing every 5 years. We've not done it for 15, and then it's quote unquote conveniently being redone to make us look good. That is an argument that people will make.
So, Cheta, you've touched on the base effect that can come about with rebasing. We wanted to look at that. And then also the fact that we haven't done this in 15 years. It makes me think of the population exercise as well, doing a national census. We're still having these conversations. It came up before the elections. Here we are after the elections, a year passed. We still haven't done a national census, and yet we're having budgets every year that are purportedly to plan for a Nigeria that you still don't even know how many people are in. But I want us to jump to several questions, because this last point you raised about Nigerians being obsessed with size is quite interesting. In terms of this exercise now, let's be honest, Nigerians don't trust the government. There's a very, very big trust deficit. We're a very low trust society. And we shouldn't act like there's no reason for that there's not a foundation for why Nigerians are distrustful oftentimes of government data. We can even look at the recent unemployment brouhaha that happened in terms of how the changes came about in figuring out and naming, or rather labeling, how many Nigerians are unemployed. And I think now you're employed if you even work 1 hour a week or something like that. And that just, strikes many people as being strange. But in terms of this particular exercise, some people are wondering if this won't be used to perform magic when it comes to inflation, which currently stands at about 35%. Do you think the fears and the lack of trust, particularly with the rebasing exercise, are very valid? And do you think the government is taking into consideration what those fears represent and how they need to address them?
First things first, to answer your question directly, the fears are valid. There's no, Nigeria is a low trust society, and it's a low trust society for good reason. We've played fast and loose with data for a very long time. So, for example, the example which you brought up, the unemployment figures. What the unemployment figures essentially mean is that anybody who is so I'll give an example. I stay in a compound that has three buildings. I live in one of the buildings. One of my neighbors has a young boy who is about 15 years old. So funny enough, it means that he was born the last time we rebased the economy. Now I can call him on Sunday and say, Dipo, come and wash my car, and I'll pay you 500 to wash my car on Sunday. And he uses an hour to wash the car just on Sunday. Based on the current unemployment methodology that we are using, that's 1 hour that he's washing my car on Sunday, 1 day a week. means that he's unemployed, and then we'll count him as being employed. That's everybody and their dog knows that is a ridiculous, that is ridiculous. But that is our official figures. So it means that you can't plan on such figures which are basically designed to make the government look good. The government themselves will be blindsided by such figures. They will not know the real situation. So I think it was ProShare that published an infographic that shows just how interesting this was, because we had unemployment figures of about 42%, and suddenly it dropped down to 4%. Not because of any government policy, but because of the statistical exercise. What that does, the unintended consequence of that is that people stop trusting statistical figures from the government, and it means that every government planning goes to waste even before you start it. So, good example, the budget. The budget is a work of fiction, and it has been a work of fiction since I began to follow budgeting in Nigeria, which is almost 20 years now. And it's coincidental that it's about 20 years ago, 19 years to be precise, that we did the last census. You can't plan if you don't know how many you are. I am of the opinion that they're not up to 200 million Nigerians. That's my personal opinion. Because of the fact that I have traveled all over this country, and so the eye test tells me that they are not up to 200 million Nigerians. The teledensity tests, that's basically people using mobile networks, also tells me that they are probably not up to 200 million Nigerians. But a proper census, a proper and honestly done census, I think it's very important to point out that it has to be honestly done, because one of the problems with Nigeria is that we are not a nation, we are a country of various nations. The country has been designed and optimized in such a way that we don't trust each other, we're always at each other's throats. So the best example is the 1973 census. When people rejected the results, they did another census, and then suddenly everybody had overblown figures. Again, part of it is because of the fact that we use population numbers to share resources. So you have the situation where people have an incentive to inflate their population numbers because they want resources. It's all about incentives. We have our incentives in Nigeria are warped, and until we can actually walk back from those warped incentives to start rewarding things that will produce proper growth, we will keep having these problems.
All right, so Cheta, let's expand the conversation on rebasing, this rebase exercise. So in a recent interview, Professor Godwin Owo is executive chairman of the Society for Analytical Economics, Nigeria. He said, and I quote, "There can be no credible GDP rebasing within an environment of persistent GDP empirical debasing," end of quote. He also argued that reliable rebasing could only be necessitated where the actual price drivers of growth, reflected by the dynamics in interest rate, exchange rate, and inflation rate, propel development outcomes that are above the quantitative GDP as measured per time. Now, what do you think about this submission? Does he have a point? Is there a point to this rebasing exercise?
It's absolutely correct to a very large extent. However, there is every point to the rebasing exercise, because if anything, what the rebasing exercise will do is that it will give us a basis to understand the true nature of our economy. It's very important that we understand the true nature of our economy. Again, going back to the example I used earlier, I said oil, oil has an outsized effect in the imagination of Nigerians. Too many Nigerians cannot think beyond the oil industry. Newsflash, oil is 8.6% of our GDP. That means that you have 91.4% of economic activity in Nigeria that oil does not touch.
Wow.
I think that by the time we rebase, oil will probably be even less of a contributor to Nigeria's actual economy, because a lot of the international oil companies have been divesting. over the last few years. So one of the things that a properly done rebasing exercise will do is it will capture all of these nuances, all of these realities. We just had Lemfi raise $53 million the other day. A lot of that money, so yes, Lemfi is registered outside of the country, but they do a lot of business here. That's money that is raised, that's money that they raised, or whatever portion comes to Nigeria, will need to be captured. A lot of the fintech, so you have the Paystacks, you have the Flutterwaves, you have the Money Points, all of them, they are not captured in the current calculations, because this line of businesses did not exist when the last time we rebased. So we need to rebase. We also have a situation where according to our current economic measures, agriculture contributes 26% to our GDP. Anybody who has been watching the agricultural sector will know that this is no longer accurate. Agriculture has been shrinking because of various conflicts in Nigeria, so we need to know what the real situation, what the real structure of the economy is. Once we have a proper idea of the real structure of the economy, then we can have a chance to do proper planning. The proper planning is something that could happen. That's up to us. But at least let us have the right structure first. So it's important. The rebasing is a very important exercise.
Wow, thank you so much for the wealth of knowledge you have been sharing with us on the show today. Very insightful, I must say, especially when you captured some of the businesses that has, come up in the last 15 years that have not been adequately captured in our GDP. But at this very juncture, Cheta will take a break. But when we get back, we'll focus on the underground economy, or gray economy as some of us will call it. What could be the impact of counting the uncounted illegal activities of prostitution, drug trafficking, and others? Very interesting conversation still ahead of us. Stay tuned.
Thanks for staying with us. This is still Jasiri, and we're still looking at a controversial and complex move by Nigeria's National Bureau of Statistics. The decision to incorporate proceeds from illicit activities like drug trafficking and prostitution into the calculation of the country's GDP. Now, what does this mean for Nigeria's economic data and the morality of economic measurements? Cheta Nwanze, partner at SBM Intelligence, an Africa-focused market security intel gathering and strategic consulting firm, is our guest as we navigate this conversation. Cheta, once again, thank you for still being here. Now, the planned rebasing seeks to formalize the $146 billion underground economic activities with a focus on human trafficking, a focus on prostitution and smuggling, which the government itself has often described as economic sabotage. So where do you think this is coming from?
So,
Cheta, I want to ask Yahoo. I want to add.
Please, she whispered to me that why are we not asking? Why are we not adding 419 Yahoo proceeds?
It's actually a very large contributor to our underground economy. So I don't know why it's not being mentioned in all of the this. Now, Nigeria is a highly, and if I must say, hypocritically moralistic society. We always, I feel that some of the bravest individuals in Nigeria are these girls who go to stand on our streets every night. Because in a country like Nigeria, they can disappear and nothing will happen. Having said that, it's only a grand total of 4 countries: Italy, Belgium, the Netherlands, and Germany, that include prostitution as part of their GDP. Italy began to calculate prostitution as part of its GDP in 1987. Belgium actually has a complete methodology for getting prostitution revenue. So in Belgium, what is illegal is pimping. People who, and they don't call them prostitutes in Belgium, they call them sex workers. They undergo regular health checks. They have very nice accommodations that are set aside from them, for them. They have, everything is done to make sure that they work in dignity and that their work can be taxed. which is the key thing. How do you calculate the revenue from these activities? And the key word is illicit. How do you calculate? You make sure that they are brought into the tax bracket. In Nigeria, given our moralistic nature, any attempt or group of attempted attempts to bring all of these things into the tax bracket will be met with a unity of pastors and imams standing in front and harassing the girls, not the government officials that are taxing them. We need to be realistic about that. I don't know of any countries that includes illegal drug trafficking as part of their GDP. There's a reason why it's illegal drug trafficking. Now, I know several countries, again in the EU, and I think you just flashed a list of countries that include illicit activities, which was why there's a difference between illicit and illegal. So again in the EU, you have countries like Italy, Spain, the UK, Netherlands, Austria, who calculates illicit drugs such as hemp. So they don't calculate illegal drugs such as cocaine. We need to be able to make those differences because yes, you have the list up there again. Notice that all of these countries are in Europe. One of the things that is common to all of them being in Europe is they actually have the infrastructure and developed systems. What is our tax collection like? We are currently having a debate, a very, very important debate about reforming our taxation system because our taxation system has failed. It needs to be reformed. So I fully support the president's attempts to reform it. Whether I support the every line of detail is another discussion entirely, but it needs reform. And before then, so this is a classic case of putting the cart before the horse. We need to reform the tax system and ensure that it is the new tax system, whatever we agree to, because taxation is inherently political. We must put that into consideration. So there will be a lot of debates, a lot of arguments, a lot of name calling. But eventually, when we have reformed the tax system, we need to get it up and running efficiently. Because if you want to tax illicit activities such as drug trafficking, you need to have your police and law enforcement data on point. Yeah?
Cheta, wait, because you brought taxation into this, and it makes me feel like you're drawing a direct line from the inclusion of these illicit activities into them being taxed eventually somewhere down the line here in Nigeria. And just the idea of how do you tax prostitution that is illegal? How do you tax drug trafficking? How do you tax human trafficking? And even when you talk about the moralistic and hypocritical nature of our society, we want to add human trafficking, money that is made from kidnappings, from sexual trafficking, into calculations of our GDP. I'm sitting here asking myself how. So are you telling me that we should expect a direct line and a direct correlation between including these things in our GDP calculations with their eventual taxation down the line?
But one of the ways that you calculate GDP is through tax revenues. So again, I made that distinction between illicit and illegal. Kidnapping ought to be illegal anywhere in the world. What do you call it? Drug trafficking ought to be illegal. Now, with drug trafficking, so depending on the society, prostitution is either illegal or illicit. In Nigeria, it is illegal. So if we want to calculate it and want to be honest about that, want to include it in GDP calculation, then we should actually make it legal. We should sit down and do that hard work, but I can assure you that that particular one will not fly in the Nigeria of today. It's not going to go through the National Assembly. Well, we would actually need to be honest and do that particular one. Sit it down and say, okay, these are the aspects. Look at prostitution end to end, like they do in the Netherlands, for example. Yes. It's an end-to-end thing. Solicitation is illegal in the Netherlands. Pimping is illegal. These are aspects of prostitution, which in Nigeria nobody talks about because it is men that do those. In Nigeria, we're always interested in attacking the women who, in many cases, are victims of pimps or enforced solicitation.
Or
And
even
this brings us
trafficking.
into human trafficking.
Yes.
Because human trafficking is a part of that chain. But human trafficking is immoral, illegal anywhere in the world. I've not found any country that includes human trafficking. But then again, my organization has published 4 reports over the last 4 years that shows that the kidnapping industry in Nigeria is a huge industry. And the MBS themselves, before their website went down, actually published a report that corroborated our reports, and actually went ahead to say that we even underestimated the size of the kidnapping industry in Nigeria. But you can't. What you need to do is, rather than give kidnapping or human trafficking a veneer of legality because you want the economy to look big, what you should do is strengthen your law enforcement to make sure, because one of the problems that we have is that all of these so-called industries are booming in Nigeria because of our unemployment problem. A lot of young people can't find jobs, so they eventually end up doing these things, which brings us right back to the stats. When you have unemployment figures saying that you have unemployment at 5%, but in reality it's more like 40%.
Yeah.
So it brings us right back to the lack of trust that people have in government data, because government data is being manipulated to make the government look good rather than to help the government come up with good policies.
Wow, I'm just sitting here listening, and I'm really wondering to myself how we're going to go about this, because Nigeria is a peculiar country. Research and data collection is your bread and butter. I'm just curious how you want to collect this data, because this is not a walk in the park. You are talking illicit activities, we're talking illegal. You know, the thin line, even in Nigeria, we're still walking lines that are blurred. Yeah. Not to talk of now wanting to make clear distinctions where you know that the people will not be able to put themselves before it. Naturally, we underreport in Nigeria. The statistics are never what they say it is, even up to reporting accident victims at a scene of a crime or an accident. What are the methodologies that you would have to employ to make this happen? And what are the challenges that you foresee? Because definitely there must be challenges in accurately, estimating the proceeds from this illicit/illegal activities. Because the distinction in Nigeria is still interwoven on many grounds.
Okay, so first things first. By definition, if you want to calculate something like GDP, a lot of it is by tax revenue. That's the main way that you calculate it, because tax in most places is usually a fixed percentage of the income. If it's properly reported, then it makes it easier to calculate, especially when you have a transparent system of collecting accounts, issuing tax receipts, and you don't have non-state actors as we have in Nigeria, creaming off the top. In 2021, we published a report which showed that 98% of people in Nigeria's informal sector pay one form of levy or the other, call it a tax, to non-state actors. And those non-state actors are very untransparent, very opaque in the way they remit those funds. So before you can start talking of tracking illicit or illegal activities, you really have to reform the system. You really have to make sure that the system is very robust in terms of how it takes those revenues into account. If you don't have that, then what you will get at best is guesstimates. That's what you will get at best. And guesstimates are open to anybody's interpretation. On a bright note, the IMF and the World Bank are overlooking this change process. So they have every incentive to make sure that the MPS does not misbehave. I don't doubt, personally, I don't doubt the professionalism and the motives of the people within the MPS. However, what I doubt is the political incentives around everything that is happening. And one thing that I've learned in my years of working in this country is that political incentives can be very, very powerful. When they start putting pressure, most Nigerians, and for good reason, will crack. And that is the fundamental problem.
Okay, so 2022 research conducted by Tari Karimo, Mohammed Tumala, and Ibrahim Wambai, and published by the Central Bank of Nigeria, puts Nigeria's shadow economy, which includes both informal transactions and other concealed activities, at 58.2% of the GDP. And this was estimated at a whopping $252 billion at the time. What does this really mean to incorporate this data into the GDP? Because you're writing saying that most of the time we're often left to guesstimates, especially the citizens. That's what we do for a living, because we do not exactly have a lot of transparency when it comes to this data. So what does this mean for its incorporation?
I mean, if you have, for example, as of 2021, then when that report was published, our GDP officially was about $482 billion dollars. Sorry. Now, if what that report implied was that the informal economy was actually larger, slightly larger by a factor of about 4:5, was larger than the formal economy. So, which means that there was another 500 and something billion dollars that was not in the system, which automatically meant that Nigeria by that 2021 was already $1 trillion economy. Now, the implication of that, if Nigeria is suddenly officially found to be $1 trillion economy, we move from low income to, at the very least, middle income, upper middle income. It would have an effect on our GDP per capita. According to the IMF, we now have about the lowest GDP per capita in West Africa of about $877 per person. If you suddenly quadruple the size of our economy, that will quadruple as well. It will affect things like credit rating, ability to access loans, and most importantly, expectations from foreign direct investment. All of these, in my opinion, will be a statistical exercise done without changing the fundamentals of our economy. We still have an economy where transportation links are awful. Just last week, SBM Intelligence published a report about the state of our roads. And we found 86% of the people who responded to our survey, we went around the country to speak with drivers. 86% of the people who responded to our survey told us that they spend probably 5 times as much time as they should on the roads because of bad infrastructure and all of that. Bad infrastructure, insecurity being the top two. Now, these things have an effect. If you have a large economy, but the lifeblood of the economy, transportation, is a problem, then you are not going anywhere. You are only deceiving yourself. So for me, my call with in all of this really is for the government to be very mindful that it is not looking for data that will make them feel good, because that's one of our problems in this country. We always like to feel good rather than hitting ourselves with the truth so that we can roll up our sleeves and actually get the work done.
That's a big part of it. In terms of the ethical implications, let's quickly look at that. I know there's a bigger picture here to look at, but in terms of the ethical implications from illegal activities being part of the economy, you talked about us being hypocritically moralistic. So I might not even ask you anymore if this is a moral or an economic conversation. What message, I'm really curious about that. Do you think that the inclusion of prostitution, drug trafficking, human trafficking, and there's one more I can't remember now. What's the message you think it sends to Nigerians when it comes to the government looking to include these illicit activities in the GDP conversation, in the GDP calculations, especially as we continue to hear Nigeria is trying to crack down on drug trafficking. We're trying to crack down on human trafficking. We're actually a hub for drugs that come out of South America into Nigeria, across West Africa, across the African continent, and even going into Europe. Those are things we're seeing, international collaborations and trying to solve, but yet we now want to include in GDP conversation. So is there an international reputation conversation here? Is there also a conversation as to how this might send different messaging to the Nigerian people as well?
What you just asked is a jam question, Tulu. I don't even know how to pick it.
You start from somewhere.
So for a start, I'm not quite sure of the message that it sends, whether it sends any message more powerful than the fact that we already have serious reputational problems. And every now and then we have stories of people who are in the government or who are adjacent to the government at best being picked up by the FBI in the United States for involvement in scams. So we already take reputational hits every now and then. One of the reasons that Dubai, the UAE, was preventing Nigerians from coming was because of violence associated with our cult groups. And our cult groups are deeply involved in fraud, internet fraud. So there's already a huge reputational issue. For a very long time, Nigerian girls were at the center of the prostitution ring in Italy.
Yes.
And I think it's very important to point out because in Italy, prostitution is not illegal. They were at the center of the illicit, so they were trafficked into Italy for the purpose of prostitution. So you see where an illegal activity dovetailed into an illicit activity. So I think that including these particular activities into the GDP calculation is a sort of nod to reality, given that a huge proportion of our youths are employed, and I'm using the word very loosely, given that a huge proportion of our youths are employed in these sectors. However, it belies the big problem that we are not even calculating unemployment properly. So we are not pushing forward policies that will bring these people out of these sectors and into proper productive sectors. That is the issue. We need to push aside the moralistic argument and make an argument based on pure productivity. These sectors, how productive are they? You can't have a country of almost 200 million people and then they don't produce things that the world wants. It's just the end effect, the end of that road is Sudan.
Yeah.
That is the ultimate end of that road if we don't turn it around very quickly.
Cheta, before we let you go in 30 seconds, so let's take it back to in the beginning when we started off by asking what had changed.
In the beginning, God made the heaven and the earth.
When we started off by asking what had changed between the last rebasing exercise and now, what do you think about this rebasing exercise? What do you think that will tell us about the Nigerian economy? Are there perhaps alternative methods that could be explored to address the shadow economy without incorporating illegal activities into GDP?
And I think you have about a minute and a half because of time. Apologies.
Yeah, I mean, again, we'll start from the beginning. Rebasing is very important. It has to be done. By the time it is done, we'll have a better picture of what our economy looks like. We will know that one thing I'm very certain is that we'll know that oil contributes a much smaller percentage to our economy. The digital economy, fintechs, will have a larger impact. Nollywood will have a larger impact. But the sector that I expect to have grown the most significantly is trade. We've become a trading nation, and I think one of the big tragedies of our country is that our government by default goes out of its way to stifle trade. We are a huge, even for example, today you mentioned transshipments of drugs.
Yes.
From South America through Nigeria and into Europe. Hey, in brutal terms, remove the moral and this, and just in pure economic terms, that is trade. We have become a huge trading country. We need to actually go out of our way to make that formal and to make it efficient.
Wow, we want to say thank you so much, our very esteemed and intelligent guest, Cheta Nwanze, partner at SBM Intelligence, an Africa-focused market and security intel gathering and strategic consulting firm. Thank you so much for being our guest today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Cheta, we'll see you soon. Because I think there's one thing we didn't get to, which is they announced it as a plan. They haven't started it. Do we think it's going to make it? We haven't heard, because drug trafficking, prostitution, we haven't heard from our religious organizations. So I'm not sure if this plan will become an actual thing.
Nigerians, you had said everything. We're very hypocritical. But sometimes we have to learn to think in naira, and we have to think in numbers.
No, I think doesn't that now mean we're endorsing it? That's another conversation.
That's whether we endorse or not, it's already there.
No, we are quite rigid to change.
That's the thing. Whether we like it or not, I would rather have regulation in prostitution. I don't know about maybe drugs
So it
trafficking
means
and all
that the issue of criminalizing these activities have to be off the
addressed
table.
on the table too.
No, it has to be off the table if we're talking about.
We have to go, but we also want to show you that, of course, we are almost set for our town hall in Kano. That's kicking off about 11 a.m. today. Please make sure you join us. If you're on the road, you can join us via our social media platforms on YouTube, X, and Instagram as well. We'll be live streaming there. Of course, watch us on DSTV 422 and Star Times 274. We'll be heading out now, but wanted to see if we could get you. Yes, so we have almost a full hall now, and we'll be shortly starting the town hall. We're expecting representatives of the Kano State government, Pfizer as well, but largely we'll be hearing from the victims and those who have been affected. $72 million. Let me not get it wrong.
$175,000.
It's supposed to be $175,000 per victim, per family, and $75 million to the Kano State government. What happened to the money? What happened to compensation? What happened to justice? This is News Central. The town hall kicks off at 11 a.m. We'll see you then.